In November of 2023, the Swell Pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell Pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell Pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell Pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell Pod.
This is interview 79 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at Kiln, Portland in Oregon, talking with Tori Wright. Tori is the founder of BEHCA, that's BEHCA. BEHCA is a software that helps decode the language of behavior by looking at influencing variables from our environment that impact our ability to regulate. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
Tori Wright, thank you so much for letting us just pull you in at the last minute when you were coming into the Kiln. This is the Swell Pod, part of the Kiln Road Trip, trying to get to 100 pleasantly rebellious interviews. And
you're one of the 100.
I think you're like number 83, and this is like incredible. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is because it was last minute. I'd love to know who you are, what you do, what you do, then why you care about what you do.
Okay, yes, my name is Tori Wright, and I am the founder of a company called BEHCA, which stands for, it's long, it's Behavior, Environment, Health Comparative Analysis, which is a software that decodes the language of behavior. So what does that actually mean? Yeah. Well, my background is in special education and working with individuals with really more complex and challenging behavior and trying to understand what contributes to that behavior. And as a person who's been in this field for the better part of 26 years, I wanted to find solutions that were data-driven. So we created an app that looks at variables such as weather, moon phases, environmental transitions, sensory, all kinds of things, tracking that along with how the person is showing up each day. And what that allows us to do is to modify our supports, both environmentally and from a person-centered point of view. And I work a lot with foster homes, group homes, special education and education settings. And we actually have a huge market in Australia and New Zealand right now because their government is asking for data specifically related to what BEHCA does. Wow. So that's a long and short version of what we do.
Yeah, it was very, very good. I mean, honestly, that's given me a lot of different thoughts and potential questions, Josh, too. So how... and it's children. It sounds like children to address what age groups?
Yeah, so technically it's any ages at this point. I mean, obviously you're going to, if you're tracking behavior, probably not much younger than 2.5 or 3. Right. Clear through adults as well, because I've also worked in the intellectual disability world, and so that it doesn't go away. So sometimes those behaviors continue into young adult.
How does it track the behavior? You help me understand that a little bit better? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So the app itself is very customizable. So you set the app up based on the individual. So it is really person-centered. And me being a rebellious person, actually, nice. I don't like the way that we look at behavior. I feel like most often we approach behavior on trying to change the person rather than changing the supports around them. And we use these terms like person-centered and trauma-informed. And I say, yeah, it's kind of like organic and sustainability. It doesn't mean anything unless you do it. And so part of the reason why we built the app the way we did is we wanted it to be truly person-centered. So when you first set it up, you go through a whole series of creating your drop-down menus, but it's guided through really looking at warning behavior. So for those that aren't really familiar with behavior, there's always precursors. We all wake up different ways each day. We all kind of have different things that happen throughout the day that determine how well we can handle stuff. We're really looking at what are those variables that influence us where we're not our best self. And if you translate that into behavior, we also have subtle changes within our behavior. Like maybe we're a little bit more agitated, we're a little bit more grumpy, and our body language, our facial expressions are all changing based on that. So tracking data from that perspective really allows us to look at the person as a whole to identify when they're just starting to get that warning sign, so then we can effectively provide intervention. So when you're talking about challenging behavior, these are behaviors that aren't great and we don't want them. It's not helping anyone. Quality of life is low. So I don't know if that fully answers.
Yeah, 100%. It does.
Seems obvious that we need those types of things, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for patterns in the data.
Exactly.
So you don't jump to the wrong conclusion, or maybe no conclusion because it's just too overwhelming, but you're kind of pinpointing where the thing might be going wrong and where to address it.
Yeah. So you're immediately, by tracking some of these things, a lot of behavior tracking, just as a side note, look at challenging behavior and just do what I call tick mark tracking. So they're tracking like how many times they hit, kicked, bite, ran away, like whatever it is. We are actually really hyper focusing on those warning behaviors. Oh, they have their hoodie on, their face looks furrowed, their brows are furrowed, or they're pacing more, repeated questions. And what that does, to your point of the patterns and looking for those trends, you automatically see the duration and frequency of those baseline behaviors, but then you're also looking at what is influencing it. And are there certain times of day, certain days of the week? Are there like 2 weeks we're good and then there's a third week that's really bad? So you'll identify those cycles.
Wow, I've got so many questions now.
Yeah, so go ahead.
No, go on.
Okay. So you mentioned that Australia and New Zealand are really interested in what you're doing. As a result of gathering the data and inputting interventions, is that the correct word?
Yes.
Yeah. So interventions, like what is Australia and New Zealand, say for example, interested in the data? So what interventions are they looking to implement, and help us understand how that handoff works, and what do those interventions look like?
Yeah, so it would really just depend. So let's say somebody has a warning behavior that's like pacing and repeated questions. That might be a point that I would go, my intervention would be to check in with them, validate whatever's going on. I might be paying attention to what are the things that have happened throughout that day that might be causing that agitation. And then I'm also going to problem solve with that individual. Or there might be a sensory integration at that point, or I'm going to offer a break for them to go for a walk with me. So those are the interventions, are things that we do to support regulation.
I understand.
And we can't support somebody from avoiding full dysregulation if we're not looking at those warning signs. So that's where the disruptor from my point of view is like, we have to stop looking at this as we're trying to fix the person. No, we have to figure out what's getting them to that point to begin with, and then how do we get in front of it. So collecting the data starts to give us a better whole picture of what their world is like.
Okay, that makes sense. And I probably should have asked this earlier. So the target audience of your app is a behavioral therapist or a parent, or help me understand who
I would say there's a couple different target audiences. So schools. Yes, any parent that is in this situation. A lot of people go to autism right away. Yes, we have a lot of users that definitely are on the autism spectrum, but there are other users too, because sometimes people just have more of a challenge in life. But it would be more like foster home and group home kind of residential type situations. Yeah. No, we did develop an app that's kind of a sideline to it that's for personal, so you could track yourself in this capacity as well, because to your point, it is something we should know about ourselves.
That's really interesting.
So there is one we could test out, right?
Yeah.
I like that, because you read like Atomic Habits and many of the 5-second rule and all those things, but you're looking for the triggers. Where like you have to create a spreadsheet. How are you going to track it? And so I guess the app allows you to kind of start tracking what different scenarios and even subtle things like what you're wearing, what the weather's like, right? How frequently do you have to update the app? I mean, is it watching? Is it listening? Is it able to kind of get some input without you having to journal constantly? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are a little over 7 years into the app, and we're trying to always integrate more and more. But we have an analytics page that does all sorts of graphing, and based on the data that you're putting in. And then that graphing will start to, I call that's where I create the story. That's where I start to build my hypothesis of what's going on. And it also starts to inform, do I see a cycle? Do I see any kind of trends or patterns over a period of time that I've been collecting data? And I might also use that tool if there's, say, staff using it, and I'm noticing that they're only tracking challenging behavior, but not here. It's also a tool to say, hey, we need to be doing this other thing here because the data is showing we're not supporting them appropriately.
Oh, yeah. And did you just say it's also assessing, it's not all about negative. It's actually just as a parent, it's encouraged to
That's right.
point out the positive, which we get wrong all the time, right? You're tracking the whole thing.
Yes.
Some things automated on it, like it knows what the weather is, right?
It knows what the weather, the moon phases, barometric pressure,
Yeah.
those kinds of things are built. There's an API from a weather app. Yeah.
What does it go on? I was going to say, what's the future? Where do you see this? Because I mean, like the technology that now exists that didn't exist 7 years, or at least wasn't accessible, like machine learning and AI and natural language processing is like massive.
Yeah.
And then you have a question.
You need a couple, but that's a great question. Yeah. That's a really good question.
So I'm currently in the process of considering some funding because I do want to integrate AI at some point. I want to be very careful and mindful because this is a human experience and it's human behavior, and human behavior from my perspective of doing this for 26 years is a little unpredictable. And so, that might be really hard to train the AI in that department. However, for the predictability of like some of those patterns, giving suggestions of interventions or giving recommendations, like have you checked this, or more push notification type intervention for the person who's gathering data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And where does it end? Does it recommend? I mean, I kind of want it to. There's a couple of scenarios where you're like, I want it to tell me what the problem is.
Yeah.
Well, what the solution is, what the the assessment. Oh, you are X, and we now know it's bipolar. It's this. I don't know.
So diagnosing.
Yeah, sorry. That's the word I wasn't finding there.
Yeah. So as a person, again, who is a little bit of a disruptor, I find that every nervous system is uniquely different. So I'm not always a huge fan of the diagnosing because it's like, I just want to look at the individual and then how can we adjust? Because at the end of the day, we all probably could be labeled with something.
Right. Yes, yeah.
But what's important? Is it important to regulate yourself, or is it important to know that you have this label? And from my perspective, it's much more important to learn what are my patterns and my triggers, like you had mentioned.
Right.
So then how do I support myself? And if I kind of know ahead of time and I start paying more attention to it and I'm much more attuned to my body, then I can adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
What's been the most exciting moment in the development of what you've been working on?
I think more recently, just the awareness of how important this is. Early on, I was way ahead of where the industry was. And so I was having to do a lot of education and explanation as to why I was looking at behavior the way I was. And now people really get it. I think COVID kind of brought to light mental health in general. And then the idea of regulation, people are talking about that way more. So that has been really exciting. I have also authored 2 books that are supportive of these pieces of information.
Oh my gosh.
So that's good.
How can we need 45 minutes, I think.
No.
Can you tell me what the names of the books are?
It's See Beyond Behavior and See Beyond Emotions. I'm working on a series. Very cool.
Very cool. We do have 2 remaining questions that we like to ask everybody that comes in, one of which I'll ask, and Spencer, you can ask the last one if you want. But so you work out of Kiln? Is that correct?
I actually don't. I come here frequently for meetings with a group of women who also own software companies.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
What is that group called? Is it
Lionesses?
Lionesses.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so your group meets at Kiln. I'm sorry, how frequently?
About once a month.
Once a month. That's awesome. So tell us about the group and tell us about Kiln and why those things work together, I guess, and help us. Yeah,
Kiln seems to be great. I love the creative space here. It feels pretty awesome walking in here, but our group has been meeting for quite a while now. I joined the group a little bit later, but they've been together for a few years, and we all just support one another. And having software as a business is a unique subset. And I was not a technology person at all. My expertise is very much in the field of behavior. So I've had a big learning curve, and this group of women has been incredible. So we just kind of listen to what are our pain points. We help each other solve problems. We whiteboard and do whatever it takes to find solutions and share resources.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Wow. So have you had to get into programming, or is it more about the understanding of managing the teams that you're getting to build what you build?
So my business partner is the program aspect of it. That being said, I have had to learn a tremendous amount. So yes, managing, but also really understanding the language and being able to talk to developers, and
very
all
good.
of that has been big.
Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Moterra Camper Vans, a luxury camper van rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Moterra camper vans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Moterra instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Moterra offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomoterra.com/swell. That's gomoterra.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
also ensure energy security with backup power during outages,
reduce carbon emissions with renewables.
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables,
and enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Well, last question, and I'm so glad that we had you on today. Thank you for saying this strange guy coming up to you and asking you to be on this podcast behind the curtains. We like to ask, what does it take, in your experience, your opinion, to create something that never existed before, like you have done?
That's a great question. I would say, first and foremost, you've got to have a clear clear plan, but also be willing to listen to other people. I think sometimes we can have something in our head and try to put it down and then try to forge forward. But if you're not really listening to other people that are in a similar field or even outside of your field, then you're going to run into really big pain points and not really understand why. And I think that's something that I've always really valued, is I'm only as smart as people that I surround myself with. And I really intentionally try to seek people outside of my group of colleagues because I want to hear what the world is doing. And I think for what I've done, I also have intentionally put myself in different fields, if you will, to learn different aspects so that when I'm coming in, I have more of a holistic approach, but dedication is also really important.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in 2 ways. 1, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, at the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.